This story starts with the 7 days in which the earth was created and the creation of Adam and Eve. Following up, we see a representation of the Judean desert and the commerce between Canaan, Mesopotamian, and Egyptian civilizations, with the view of Egypt symbolizing the decades that the Jews were enslaved. Abraham is heading toward his journey from Hanan to Canaan, the divine intervention that prevents the sacrifice of his son Isaac. Next, we find Sarah, Abraham's wife, and Jacob, Isaac's son, and the tree that represents the 12 tribes of Israel, with a branch descending the tribe of Joseph with Egyptian symbols on his hand, and a ring referencing his close friendship with the Pharaoh. Upwards, we observe Moshe holding the tablets of the law after leading his people in the exodus from Egypt through the Dead Sea and the journey to Canaan. The matriarchs Rivkah, Leah, and Rahel are represented, as well as their tombs, followed by the city of Bethlehem and the prophet Deborah. King David holding the arp and the psalms. The kingdoms of Rehoboam and Jeroboam are depicted, along with Aaron giving the Kohanim blessing. Shaul, who united the 12 tribes, is shown above a broken column representing the destruction of the kingdoms mentioned before. Next, we can see King Solomon, son of David, and the Solomonic door, as well as the construction of the first temple of Jerusalem. Above the temple, we see the exile of King Jehoiachin of Judah towards Babylon. To one side of it, we see the prophet Eliyahu, who is depicted going up to the sky in a carriage pulled by horses. Below the horses is Eliyahu's chair, which symbolizes the circumcision ritual, also known as the Brit Milah. Below him is an image of the construction of the Second Temple and the representation of its destruction. The next scene indicates the revolution, instructed by Rabbi Mattityahu and his son, Yehuda Maccabeus, who led it. Next, the effigy of Julius Caesar and the presence of Herodes, king of Judea. The sculpture of Titus references the destruction of the Second Temple, as well as the end of the prophet era and the beginning of rabbis. We see, again, falling columns, and below them, the image of a synagogue as a symbol of the predominance of these buildings. The scrolls, at the bottom part, depict the discovery of the manuscripts of the Dead Sea. Next to Herodes, we find Philon of Alexandria. To the front, we see a character playing the shofar to announce the Jewish New Year. Below the columns falling apart, we see the cup of Kiddush, and to its right, a detail of the Dura Europos synagogue. Above, we can see the revolution of the Jews during the kingdom of Hadrian, and the following one led by Simon bar Kosiba. To the side of this image, we see a representation of Passover. Up next, we find Gregory the Great. The image of the Crusades and the establishment of the Kingdom of Jerusalem is illustrated with a shield. Maimonides and Isaac Abarbanel's faces, as well as an image of the apparition of the Kabbalah together with the Zephyrat. Right next to this, there is Rabbi Moshe de Leon, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, Rabbi Isaac Luria, and Rab Shimon bar Yohai with a hand raised. The map of the Mediterranean region illustrates the constant emigration of the Jewish communities. Next to the faces of the Kabbalah teachers, there is a partial view of the construction of the Jerusalem walls, ordained by Suleiman. Upwards, we can see the Mediterranean map, where several Jewish immigrants stayed in 1543. Following, we can see Mendes Nasi and the Portuguese Sephardic philosopher Baruch Spinoza. The face of Manasseh ben Israel symbolizes the lawsuit he presented to Oliver Cromwell to abolish discrimination in 1635. The series of scenes of jobs, such as shoemakers, tailors, and merchants, represent the 500,000 Jews who sought refuge fleeing to Italy, France, England, and the Balkans between 1550 and 1750 and stayed in shtetls. The main reforms of Judaism are represented by Baal Shem Tov, author of the Hasidic Judaism, Vilna Gaon, who developed classic rabbinic, and Moses Mendelssohn by contemporary Judaism. Napoleon's face is the testimony of the Agreement of Freedom of Religion in France in 1793. The map that is shown next to it highlights the Russian, Prussian, and Austrian invasion of Poland, where the Jewish community used to live in ghettos. We see a menorah with lit candles. Below it, we see Eliezer ben Yehuda, who in 1894 renewed Hebrew with the creation of a dictionary. We see, too, the figure of Theodor Herzl in a balcony, who proposed the creation of the State of Israel. And next to him is Rabbi Yitzhak Halevi Herzog. Above Schechter, we see the first Israeli flag in 1897 during the first Zionist Congress in Switzerland. Next to it is Alfred Dreyfus, and below it, we see Leon Pinsker. Next to Pinsker, we see the image of Zeev Jabotinsky, promoter of Zionism. Above this, we see the Statue of Liberty in New York, a symbol of the Jewish immigrants. Then, we see the face of Edmund Rothschild, who helped many Jews financially to flee Russia towards Palestine, which is why he is holding a map. Next to the map, we see Adolphe Cremieux's bust. Upwards is one of the wagons of death. And above it, in the background, the entrance to Auschwitz. To the right, there are shattered crystals symbolizing the night of the broken glass, the Kristallnacht. Downward, there is a map of the Ottoman Empire, which is divided because of its fall in the First World War. The minister Arthur Balfour is holding a sphere with David's star, which represents the help to the creation of the Jewish state in Palestine in 1917. Balfour is surrounded by tombs, representing the millions of victims of Nazism. Next is the monument dedicated to the just, who helped save the lives of many members of the Jewish community. The image of Anne Frank symbolizes the third of the Jewish people that was exterminated. The UN shield indicates the agreement in 1947 in the General Assembly to dissolve Palestine and create the State of Israel. Below, we see the monument of Joseph Trumpeldor, an activist who organized Jewish immigration to the future State of Israel. To one side of the Talit, there is Hannah Sins, wearing a military uniform, a heroine who collaborated with the Allies to save many victims from Nazism. The boy and girl together holding stamped balloons with the flags indicates that 50% of Israel's population comes from other countries. The map next to the children highlights when Jordan in 1949 added Eastern Jerusalem, Cisjordan, and Egypt to the Gaza Strip. Next to the children, we see Yanis Korchak, who inspired the Convention of the Rights of the Child. Next to the ship are images of Yitzhak Rabin, Ezer Weizman, and behind him, Moshe Dayan, three essential characters in the defense of the State of Israel. To one side, on a hilltop, we see the face of hero Moshe Levi. The 6 rifles represent the 6 wars: the Independence War, the Sinai War, the Six-Day War, the Yom Kippur War, and the Lebanon-Gaza Wars. Out of one of the tanks, a soldier waves a tallit to symbolize the Yom Kippur War. The other tank references the Six-Day War. We can see 2 men and 2 women of 4 different nationalities. They are leaving a plane to represent the many flights of the Operation Magic Carpet. To the right side, there are the faces of 3 rabbis: Abraham Isaac Kook, Ashkenazi, Ovadia Yosef, Sephardic, and Haim Kanievsky, Orthodox Judaism. Even if they are not contemporaries of each other, they represent 3 important religious branches. To the bottom, we see David Ben-Gurion, showing the declaration of the independence of the State of Israel. Above the Rabbi Kanievsky, we see a partial view of David's Tower, and next to it, the face of the singer and poet Naomi Shemer. To the left of her is Yitzhak Navon, 5th President of Israel. Next to him, a detail of the Hadassah Hospital. Downwards, we see the face of Ada Yonath, biologist who received the Nobel Prize for Chemistry in 2009. Next to her, Shmuel Yosef Agnon, first Hebrew writer to receive the Nobel in 1966. Below him, Abraham Yeshua, considered one of the best-known Israeli authors of our time. To his left, the writer Amos Oz. Below him, there is a skidder, alluding to the sport that is practiced in the mountains of Mount Hermon. Below the skitter is the face of the first athlete born in Israel to win medals around the world, Gal Friedman. Below the poet Shemer is the bust of Leah Goldberg, journalist and academic. The strip of film represents the Israeli cinematographic industry, since the country has received several Academy Awards. Next to Friedman are Lenoy Ashram, Olympic gymnast champion, and Ilian Ramon, first Israeli astronaut. Downwards, we see the faces of Albert Einstein, and ex-minister Shimon Peres and Golda Meir. To one side of Peres, Menachem Begin, Nobel Prize for Peace winner, which is why there is a white dove. To one side of Golda Meir, we see the complex of Azrieli Towers. To the left of Begin, we see the current Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Behind him is the logo of Beit Hanassi, the presidential residence of Israel. Next to it is a viewfinder of a nanologic camera that placed Israel to the level of technological advancements in surgical interventions. To the top are images of the first presidents of Israel, Chaim Weizmann, and of the current, Isaac Herzog, both behind the Weizmann Scientific Institute and the Hadassah Hospital to its left. In this section, we see an illustration of one half of planet Earth, a metaphor of the Jewish precept, Tikkun Olam, which means to repair the world. All the Jewish scientific, technological, and innovational contributions have this purpose. On Earth, Israel is signaled by a star, in memory of Isaiah's prophecy that the people of Israel would be the light of the nations. At the same time, we can see a scene of the participation of Chaim Weizmann at the UN, and next to him, the orange represents the high-scale emporium of technology. The lock that can be seen represents the Israeli invention of the five-wall system. Surrounding the lock, there is a mesh bandage, an Israeli invention used to prevent hemorrhages. Downwards, there is a view of a laboratory, which represents the scientific and technological advances of the country. Upwards, to the right, is the figure of Menachem Mendel Schneerson, the Lubavitch rabbi who established a wide network of institutions to satisfy religious, social, and humanitarian needs all over the world. Between the figures of the rabbi and the athlete, we see a detail of the monument to the 6 million victims of the Holocaust, represented by 6 stone steles. Next, we see a sack of grains to indicate another Israeli contribution to the world. To the top is the singer Dana International. To one side, we see the figure of well-known character of caricature, artist Dosh Shrulik, holding in his hand a flower as a symbol of peace. Below him, we see a panoramic of the Museum of Modern Art, and downwards, the famous Bridge of Jerusalem. More to the bottom, the bather with the umbrella represents tourist resources, such as Eilat. To its side, we see 2 figures of music, Yehoram Gan and Noah Kareli. Downwards, we see a general view of the Knesset building, and finally, 2 kids with the Israeli flag, who symbolize the future and the protection of the state and its citizens.